Delays, ego battles, and constitutional confusion. That's been the story of Tamil Nadu in the last few months. Chief Minister Stalin and Governor R.N. Ravi have been on collision course. The governor has been busy withholding bills, trying to rename the state, and staging a walkout in the assembly. Not to be left behind, Chief Minister Stalin has also turned up the heat. Both the DMK and its allies have held street protests against the governor. They have also passed resolutions against him in the state assembly. One such resolution was passed today. It urged the central government and president to discipline the governor, to set a timeline within which bills have to be cleared by his office. The AIA-DMK and the BJP walked out of the proceedings. In the end, the resolution was passed by DMK lawmakers themselves. Listen in to what Chief Minister Stalin had to say today.
மாநில மக்களின் குரலாக விளங்கும் சட்டமன்றங்களில் நிறைவேற்றி அனுப்பப்படும் மசோதாக்களுக்கு அந்தந்த மாநில ஆளுநர்கள் ஒப்புதல் வழங்க ஒரு குறிப்பிட்ட கால நிர்ணயம் செய்யப்பட வேண்டும் என்று ஒன்றிய அரசையும் தொடர்ந்து தமிழ்நாடு மக்களின் நலனுக்கு எதிராக செயல்படுவதை தவிர்த்து தமிழ்நாடு சட்டமன்ற பேரவையின் சட்டமியற்றும் அதிகாரத்தை நிலைநாட்டும் வகையில் இப்பேரவை நிறைவேற்றி அனுப்பும் மசோதாக்களுக்கு உரிய காலத்திற்குள் ஒப்புதல் அளித்திட வேண்டும் என்று ஆளுநருக்கு உரிய அறிவுரைகள், அந்த அறிவுரைகளை ஒன்றிய அரசும் மாண்புமிகு குடியரசுத் தலைவரும் உடனடியாக வழங்கிட வேண்டும் என்றும் இந்த பேரவை ஒருமனதாக வலியுறுத்துகிறது எனும் தீர்மானத்தை நான் மொழிகிறேன்.
Okay, let me give you some background here. The DMK government has been pushing an online gaming bill since 2022, but the governor refused to sign it, not once but twice. He sent back the latest draft on March 6, saying it violated the constitution and court judgments. So the government tabled the same bill once again on March 23rd. Cut to today. The governor finally gave his assent. The green light came hours after the Tamil Nadu Assembly passed the resolution against Governor R.N. Ravi. Just think about all the money, time and effort wasted in this useless ego battle. We the citizens are victims of these tussles. When legislation is delayed, people suffer. When bills are withheld, again, it's people who suffer. And this is not just happening in Tamil Nadu. Governors and governments are clashing in at least 6 states. 5 of them have passed resolutions and laws to reduce the governor's powers. Kerala and West Bengal removed their governors as chancellor of state universities. Rajasthan considered a similar move in 2022. Maharashtra filed a plea to try and remove their governor over comments against Chhatrapati Shivaji. They even wanted him to be certified mentally unstable. Telangana moved the Supreme Court over the same issue as Tamil Nadu. The governor's refusal to clear bills. All of this indicates a larger constitutional problem at hand. So first, let's look at the rule book. The Constitution gives the governor 3 options when a bill is passed by the State Assembly. Give your green signal, or withhold it, or consult with the President. Now, if the governor chooses option number 2, the bill heads back to the Assembly. The government can either make the amendments to satisfy the governor or pass the same bill once again. Fact is, either ways, the governor is duty-bound to give his assent to the second time round. He has no option but to say yes. But here's the catch. The Constitution does not give a time frame for this entire process, meaning the governor can hold on to the bill for as long as he or she wants. It's sort of like a pocket veto. In Tamil Nadu's case, one chapter of the governor versus government tussle has come to an end. But rest assured, it's not the final chapter. This one-upmanship between governments and governors is hurting all of us, the citizens. It's our money, our programs that are suffering. I think all of us need to keep that very clear. They can have their ego battles, that's all fine, but citizens should not suffer. Let me go across to our guests this evening for a very quick chat. I'm going to thank all of them for joining us. Uma Anandan is a BJP councillor joining us on the broadcast. Dr. Narayan Lakshman is an associate editor at The Hindu. Aditya Pratap is an advocate. And Manu Sundaram is spokesperson for the DMK. Manu Sundaram, yes, there was today pressure, resolution pressure as it were on the governor, but ultimately he has given a go-ahead to the bill that the Tamil Nadu government wanted passed, which is a bill that is banning online gaming. So has the war come to an end?
Very far from, if I can put it that way. He has given assent today after a delay of almost 8 months by my calculation to one bill out of 14 that he has admitted himself to withholding. Now, you've given us a clear understanding of Article 200, and you mentioned that this option number 2, that of withholding, is like a pocket veto. In fact, I would slightly differ. Withholding is just a way to ask for clarifications. And once the legislature clarifies the governor's questions, if he or she may have any, then the governor is duty bound. There is no option for the governor to keep it in their so-called pockets. And you also highlighted another problem, which is the absence of any time frame or timeline. Now, you see this in not just the governor, but also with another constitutional authority, the speaker. And in the Supreme Court, in the case of Kesham Megachandra in 2020 January, issued a time frame to the Speaker of Meghalaya, if I'm not mistaken, to actually deal with the disqualification Schedule 10 petition within 3 months. So it is not inconceivable that constitutional courts have come down heavily on constitutional authorities like the Speaker, and maybe they might do so for the governor too. As you rightly pointed out, Telangana has moved the Supreme Court. So the pin of accountability on governors, and more than anything, I think we must realize and we must reiterate that India is a union of states. The governors cannot act as agents of the union, but they must be vital links or bridges between the center and the union. And only such a federal structure would actually do justice to the constitutional setup of our country. So, my 3 points very quickly are: 1, governors must realize their constitutional obligations; 2, there must be a time frame; and 3, there must be some accountability. I hope I've made myself clear.
Uma Anandan, has then the governor of Tamil Nadu, Mr. R.N. Ravi, misunderstood what the constitution says about the roles and responsibilities of the governor? Because he's on record speaking to UPSC aspirants to say, if the governor withholds his assent, if he doesn't give the green signal, then it means the bill is dead, when we all know that that's not the case. Is he deliberately trying to trouble the government here by sitting on bills for as long as 8 months, 6 months? After all, the fact is that Stalin is an elected chief minister of Tamil Nadu. The governor has not been elected. The governor does not need to be accountable, perhaps, but Mr. Stalin, as the elected chief minister of Tamil Nadu, needs to be accountable to the people of his state. Why hamper him in doing his duties?
The Dravida Munnetra Kazhagam was the largest political party to have been elected.
And all. It is milk and honey to my ears, because this particular party has shown scant respect for the constitution or constitutional authority, and also do remember that one of their leaders tried to burn the constitution and then went back to say he burnt a piece of paper. So let's not forget all that. And one more thing I would like to ask, they speak about the time frame. Already the central government came out with this thing that he has banned the rummy, this thing. So they have started, and it was in the hands of this thing, central government. Second, I would like to ask, Mr. Stalin speaks about the Raj Bhavan becoming a political Bhavan. I would like to ask Mr. Stalin 2 things. What about he entertaining the Rajiv Gandhi killer Perarivalan at his house as a chief minister, entertaining him, hugging a criminal who has been convicted by the court? Was that a very big, very appropriate and an action for an elected chief minister? Was he upholding the constitution there? And third, he talks about framework. I would like to ask Mr. Stalin
but 2 wrongs don't make a right.
Framework of the constitution. No, let me tell. Before
2 wrongs don't make a right,
you must
Umaji.
correct yourself. Devils can't quote scriptures. Devils can't quote scriptures. Next, I would like to ask, he speaks about framework. Why Mr. Stalin's party came out with a plethora of promises during the election campaign? Have they promised within the framework for the public? He says this government, this law and all is for the good of the public. What about the good of the public? Arab deaths, there's Arab deaths that is about hundreds, thousands every day. Is that not for the good of the people? Why is he opening them then? This alone is very good for the people.
We can go here, there and everywhere.
The people, but we can go shops. No, first.
Umaji, we can go here, there and everywhere. But I urge you today, I urge you this evening to please focus on the subject at hand. Please focus on the subject at hand.
No,
what gives the governor the right to sit on a bill passed by an elected assembly for 8 months?
Passed by an elected assembly, he has explained it very clearly to the UPSC aspirants. Mr. Ravi is from the uniformed forces, right? He is not a nursery kid or an illiterate.
No, he is saying if I say no, the bill is dead. Umaji, he is saying if I say no, the bill is dead. That's not what the Constitution says. That is not what the Constitution says. The Constitution is clear. The governor is a guide. He has to act on the aid and advice of the elected government of the state, Umaji. And if he doesn't do that, and if he sits on bills for 8 months, then obviously charges will be made that he is acting like a political agent.
I am sorry, you say able advice of the government. Just because it's an elected body and they have the majority. Tomorrow they pass another big law. As I said, Mr. Stalin embracing Perarivalan. Do we entertain all this just because they have a majority? They are the elected representative in the assembly? I am sorry, we beg to differ on that. You cannot demean the constitutional authority of the governor at any cost. And one says you have the party people, Vaiko, talking rot about the governor. And all the other menials and DMK talking rot about the governor. Is that right? Is that propriety? Why is the DMK chief minister silent?
But the governor has also been saying things he shouldn't be saying now.
Do you tolerate all this?
Umaji, but the governor has been saying things he shouldn't be saying, like he wants to rename the state. Anyway, I'll let Manu respond. So, Manu, 10 seconds. Acha, Umaji, 1 minute. Let Manu respond to what you're saying, 10 seconds, and then I'll get my other guess in.
Nonsense.
It almost sounds like a...
You cannot allow this rampant abuse.
It sounds like a confession from the BJP that it's because that the DMK did something, that is why they're holding back the legislative, will of the people. I think that in itself is problematic. And you must understand that you do not need to be illiterate to understand the Constitution. It's the will of the people that is exercised by the legislature. I'm surprised, actually no, I'm shocked that an elected councillor is actually speaking against.
Should show the same respect.
From what I understand, elected by the people, from the city of Chennai to be a councillor. I'm very surprised she speaks. And just let me point out one other thing, if you may quickly.
Okay.
This seems to happen, as you rightly pointed in your opening remarks, in all non-BJP governed states. Kerala, West Bengal, Telangana, erstwhile Maharashtra, now Rajasthan, Bihar, and so on. So there seems to be a pattern that this is how the union, where they're not able to exercise power or, win state elections. This seems to be a pattern. And I hope the BJP will, see the constitutional light and alter its own ways and instruct governors. We've not said anything against the governor. We're hoping that the president will advise the governor to do what is right by the Constitution.
Who said?
Aditya Pratap, come in here. Umaji, give me a minute. Aditya Pratap, come in here as an advocate. The Constitution doesn't tell us how things will proceed if the governor and the government disagree on certain things. But precedent has been that, this is a relationship that has been driven by mutual respect. That mutual respect, to me, it seems, in many states, especially opposition rule states, has gone out of the window. Now, please tell me, is it now time to amend the Constitution and put in very clearly that a governor can sit on a bill for 3 months and no more, or 2 months and no more? Because, the fact is, as I said, to run a state, to run a country, the legislator's business is to pass laws. And if the governor becomes a stumbling block, the business of governance comes to a standstill, as is happening in the state of Tamil Nadu. And many other states as well.
Well, actually, I can use a couple of constitutional precedents here. We have the Supreme Court judgment in the case of Purushothaman Nambudri versus State of Kerala, 5th December of 1961. In this issue, the question came up before almost I would say, a 7-judge bench of the Supreme Court, that Article 200 of the Constitution of India does not provide any time limit within which the governor has to give his assent. So the question before the court was that if the governor keeps a bill pending, like both the houses have passed it and he does not give his assent, election happens and a new government comes, do those bills lapse? The Honorable Supreme Court held no. The Supreme Court held that wherever a time limit is required in the Constitution, there the Constitution framers have given the time limit. But the very fact, just because that they have not given a time limit in 200, contemplates that if a bill is pending governor's assent and then the term of the legislature lapses, that bill will not lapse. So clearly, on this point, Supreme Court had made the line clear.
No. But here's the thing, Aditya. Aditya, the Supreme Court may have made its line clear, but what does it mean? What does it mean? It means that if the governor is adversarial, and because most governors now are political appointees, it means for 5 years, till the elected government is in power, he or she can stop or block any bill. For 5 years, this business can go on.
No. Exactly. This is where I'm using a second point, that in several constitutional rulings, Supreme Court has coined the doctrine of fraud on the Constitution. Now, what I can say is if the governor holds his assent, see, he has 3 choices. Either he can send the bill back for reconsideration, or he can assent, or he can reserve the bill for the consideration of the president. Now, if apart from this, he just sits on his duty, remember, he is defaulting on his duty as an executive. And what we would probably need is a good 5-judge Supreme Court bench or a 7-judge bench before whom this issue can go, and using the doctrine of fraud of the Constitution, that no party can commit a fraud on the Constitution, using this as a standing point, let them declare the law. But at the same time, can the Supreme Court introduce a constitutional amendment by introducing a time limit? I would say that is difficult, and that is something which might require a constitutional amendment.
But yes, and has the time come for it? Maybe. Many people would argue, given what has been happening in the last 1 year in many states, not just Tamil Nadu, it has happened in West Bengal, it has happened in Telangana, it has happened very publicly in Kerala as well. Dr. Narayan Lakshman, one can argue that what else would you expect? If governors are political appointees, it's their job to be the main opposition party in the state then you would expect these roadblocks. And if that is the case, why doesn't a state like Tamil Nadu go to the Supreme Court and say, please, set a timeline that the governor can sit on bills for this long and no more?
No, I think we are heading towards not so much like Aditya Pratap said, maybe putting an actual timeline or a deadline for these decisions, but the subject of the governor acting by precedent or acting according to certain constitutional norms is one that's going to be taken up quite seriously, I think, in the months ahead. The broader context, obviously, being the governor, as several panelists have said here, is not supposed to be a representative of the union government in a political sense. Constitutionally, yes. Even going back to the Constituent Assembly, the draft constitution actually had, it had space for the governor being an elected official within the framework. But the actual Constituent Assembly, drawing on discussions from several committees earlier, decided that would actually go against the principle of the chief minister and his cabinet or her cabinet of ministers being the true elected representatives and manifesting that their representativeness in terms of policy. So at that point, it was decided to have a nominated governor who would be nominated by the president and would, in that sense, represent the union government. But again, I think what the context, obviously, that some of you have alluded to bear in mind is that across a number of non-BJP states, the BJP appears to be using the governor's office as a proxy to either destabilize politics within the state or maybe find its own way into the state, as in the case of Tamil Nadu, where it hasn't fully succeeded in cobbling together a solid alliance with the AIADMK, even though the AIADMK apparently walked out today. So I think this is actually politics by stealth. And it is not only politics by stealth, but it is also politics which is undermining the Constitution. And therefore, it is a fairly extreme version of politics by stealth. And we should all call it that. We should call it what it is. And I think the difficult challenge for all of us today is that when you take this to the judiciary, in a number of instances, without casting aspersions on any particular court, these rulings seem to be going a certain way. And therein lies the challenge of actually setting real limits to what the governor can and can't do in specific cases.
But why should we expect the governor to be a rubber stamp as well? That's another point of the debate. Yes, Umaji, you want to come in? Very quickly, I have 10 seconds, ma'am.
See, my request for you is to have this program recorded, whatever the DMK person told, and preserve it for eternity, because for the first time, we saw a DMK person talking about the validity of the Constitution, the virtues of the Constitution and all that, which they've never done. Neither have they shown any respect in the last so many decades. So I think you should preserve his statements for posterity and keep replaying it as and when the situations need.
Okay, but that doesn't mean that the DMK doesn't respect the Constitution. It doesn't mean the BJP doesn't respect the Constitution as well. And that's perfectly okay for a governor to be a BJP stooge in opposition rule states.
Instances.
If I ever needed a public
before I go, Manu. But that doesn't mean that the BJP tramples on the Constitution as well. Now, if the DMK has done it, ma'am, what sort of logic is that? Give me, Manu, I have 10 seconds and this is a question I want to ask you. The fact is that, you may call the governors BJP stooges. You may say that the Raj Bhavan is our political offices in non-BJP rule states, etc., etc. But, you don't expect governors to be rubber stamps. If they feel that questions need to be asked, if they feel that amendments need to be made to certain bills, they will ask for it. It's not always adversarial.
But listen, the problem is that not that they need to be rubber stamps to the state legislatures, but they've become rubber stamps or amplifiers of what the union is doing, right? That's the problem. If they are being fair, then Constitution demands of them, constitutional propriety demands of them to act in the best interest of the state. It is the state and its people who are paying for the Raj Bhavan, the bills of the governor. They're enjoying a position as the first citizen or the first man or the first lady of the state. So therefore, where is the constitutional accountability, right? And I differ with only one part of what was said earlier. We don't need to go to a constitution bench and constitute a bench of 5, 7, 9 judges. The governors need to follow the instructions that have already been given. It is very clear in the Constituent Assembly how the Constitution was framed, that the governors were bereft of discretionary powers by and large. It is this assumption of the role of a constitutional authority or a constitutional court, which they are not. They cannot judicially review a legislature. They cannot say this legislature is constitutionally ultra vires. That is the problem we are seeing with governors. And may I add, governors of non-BJP governed states. But let me also, actually thank the BJP spokesperson. If she's, trying to be a public relations agent or officer for me, I would be very glad for this show to be recorded and replayed many times, because I think it will only remind the BJP and its governors what is the correct position of the Constitution.
Okay, we'll leave it there then. Thank you very much, Manu, for joining us. Umaji, you're laughing and smiling. Thank you very much.
As I told you.
Okay, and end of the show. Umaji, khatam, end of the show. Dr. Narayan Lakshman, thank you very much for joining us. And Aditya Pratap, thank you very much for joining us as well. I'm slipping into a quick break on the show. Coming up next, we are speaking exclusively to the MD of Amul on the raging battle between Nandini and Amul in Bangalore. That's up next. Do stay with us.